My master's graduation was 13 days off. My brother said, "Skip it. Babysit." I said no, so I marked his Hawaii hotel as canceled. Imagine dedicating 7 brutal years to earning your master's degree, working full-time, burning the midnight oil, only for your own brother to tell you to skip your graduation to babysit his kids. That's exactly what happened to me. But this time I wasn't just going to say no. This time I hit back and it sent shockwaves through my entire family. It was 13 days before my master's graduation, the culmination of 7 grueling years of night school while working full-time. My brother, Mark, called buzzing with excitement. He had planned a surprise anniversary trip to Hawaii for his wife, and he needed me to watch his 3 kids for 4 days. He didn't ask. He told me the dates, expecting me to clear my schedule. I was floored. I'd planned my graduation ceremony and the celebration afterward for months on those exact days. I told him. He laughed. Mark offered me a walk during the November ceremony, as if a simple stage walk was all my master's degree meant. "It's just a stage walk," he said, "and my anniversary is once a year." My education, he claimed, could wait. His non-refundable Hawaii tickets apparently could not. I'd invited 62 people, including our grandma from Florida, who was flying in. Mark called me selfish, said I was putting paper before family, and insisted his kids needed their aunt more than some silly cap and gown. I refused. He exploded. I was his backup plan, he fumed, and he'd already told his wife about the trip. He couldn't disappoint her because of my attention requirement. He called me immature for wanting claps and declared that real adults didn't need ceremonies to feel accomplished. When I asked why he couldn't find a babysitter, he launched into his usual spiel. He didn't trust strangers, and families should support each other. The irony was sickening. He'd never paid me for watching his kids. I felt that old familiar pull of obligation, of being that aunt who always had to step up. This wasn't new. Mark had a knack for customizing my milestones. My LSAT? Missed it because he showed up with his kids, claiming a fake emergency. My bachelor's graduation? I spent the entire ceremony in the bathroom with his vomiting toddler instead of walking across the stage. But this time I was done. I had a plan. I told Mark he could drop the kids off the morning of his flight, and I'd watch them. His face lit up. This would be great preparation for having kids, he chirped. Oh, if he only knew. Today was the day. Mark dropped off his 3 kids at 8:10 a.m. for his 10:05 a.m. flight. The kids were thrilled when I told them about my surprise. After Mark left, I dressed them in their best clothes and announced we were going to a very important party. And we did. We found all my guests waiting at my graduation site. I promised my nieces and nephew they'd be special guests at my wedding, and when my name was called, "That's our aunt," they shouted, louder than anyone else. I'd even made placards for them in the front row. "Our aunt is amazing and first in the family to get a master's." The whole auditorium laughed and applauded. My 9-year-old niece, Lily, snapped photos with my phone while the 6-year-old twins showered me with flower petals I'd given them. After the ceremony, we headed to a restaurant I'd reserved. The kids had their own special booth, complete with college coloring books, graduation hats to paint, and mocktails with little umbrellas. They were on top of the world, telling anyone who would listen that their aunt was the brightest in the world, and worked so hard for this degree. They even learned the graduation song in the car and sang it at the table. Grandma Ella Lehner, bless her heart, gave them sweet certificates and honorary degrees. Everyone made them feel like VIPs at an adult party. Meanwhile, back in Hawaii, Mark and his wife arrived at their hotel to find their reservation canceled. See, the kids attending my graduation was an emergency in my book. So I used Mark's kid emergency credit card to cancel his hotel. A last-minute motel change cost him double. My phone started ringing off the hook. Mark was screaming, absolutely furious, threatening to beat me, when he returned, claiming I'd ruined his marriage. After that call, I muted my phone. Texts poured in, but I was too busy celebrating. Lily showed her ceremony photos to our friends at the kids' table. The chocolate-frosted twins made 3 trips to the dessert buffet. Grandma Ella, beaming, showed off my diploma to everyone at the head table. My best work friend dragged me to the dance floor, and we joined the group, grooving to the restaurant's music. My phone buzzed constantly, but I ignored it, laughing as Lucas taught everyone the floss, and Ava, trying to twirl like a ballerina, completely captivated me. The restaurant manager even came over to congratulate me, saying the kids had told him at least 7 times that their aunt was the brightest. Grandma danced with me, slow but steady, refusing to sit, telling me my celebration was well-deserved. Finally, after another persistent ding, I checked my phone. 19 more angry texts from Mark. I read the first few, selfish, manipulative, and put it away. The kids, completely unaware of their father's rage 2,400 miles away, smiled through the entire 3-hour celebration. At 10 p.m., the restaurant closed. As I loaded birthday goodies and leftover cake into my van, the kids chattered excitedly about their favorite parts. At a red light, I finally checked my phone. 5 voicemails. My kids were settled, watching a movie in my apartment, before I retreated to my bedroom. The first voicemail was so loud with Mark's yelling, I had to hold the phone away from my ear. He was hysterical, calling me every name in the book over the cancelled hotel. The second message threatened to tell my family the worst about me. The third grew truly menacing, promising to make me regret my choice. The fourth was a detailed list of every dollar the cancellation cost him, demanding immediate payment. The fifth was a litany of my failures, even childhood mistakes I'd long forgotten. Mark's final message was the scariest. He'd deal with me when he returned, and I should watch myself. I saved every voicemail, screenshotted every text. I walked back into the living room, my hand shaking, but the kids, engrossed in their movie, didn't notice. Later that night, Grandma Ella called to say goodnight. I took the call on my balcony, shielding the kids from our conversation. She asked how I was, and I admitted Mark's texts were intense. After a long silence, her voice quieted. She revealed that Mark had always done similar antics, expecting everyone to change their plans for him. She recalled him asking her to delay her retirement party 12 years ago because he was fishing that weekend. She changed the date, and half her friends couldn't attend. Then there was my aunt's wedding, where Mark demanded it start 2 hours early for his son's baseball game. My aunt declined, so Mark arrived late, making a grand, disruptive entrance. Grandma Ella voice trembled. "I'm proud of your final fight against him," she said. She admitted she'd been too kind to Mark as a child, always giving in to his tantrums. She said he needed to learn that his schedule and wishes weren't everything. I cried when she said she was glad I had the courage to do what she should have done years ago. We talked for another 25 minutes about Mark's actions and their family effects. She advised me not to let him shame me into apologizing before hanging up. The next morning, my alarm went off at 6:30 a.m. Out of habit, I grabbed my phone. The family group chat had 58 new notifications. I scrolled back to Mark's long 1:12 a.m. message, Hawaii time. It was a detailed victim statement. I'd promised to watch the kids, then ruined his marriage by canceling his hotel in anger. I was jealous of his happy marriage and tried to ruin his anniversary vacation. My mom begged me to call her. My dad just asked what happened. My aunt defended Mark in 3 lengthy paragraphs, saying I should have rescheduled my graduation for November, and family should always come first. 2 uncles expressed their disappointment. My cousin just left a question mark. I read these messages from my bed, the kids still asleep in the living room. Mark had successfully painted me as a bitter sibling who couldn't be ignored. Many family members supported him without bothering to ask my side. My mom's message was the hardest to read. Her worry made it seem like I was the one who had done something wrong. Before uploading, I typed out a 15-minute response in my notes app. I addressed the family discussion calmly and objectively. I stated that Mark knew I would watch the kids and never miss my ceremony. Then I included 3 photos, Lily, Ava, and Lucas in the front row, holding their placards surrounded by flower petals with my diploma in my hand. My kids, I wrote, enjoyed my graduation as special guests. Then I uploaded a screenshot of Mark's initial text message demanding I skip graduation and just walk across the stage. Next, a screenshot of him saying grown-ups don't need ceremonies and I was immature for wanting claps. The last screenshot showed him claiming his Hawaii tickets were non-refundable and that my schooling could wait. I hit send. The chat went silent. For 30 minutes. The chat read, 18 people saw your post, but no one responded. They were reading Mark's texts, in his own words, seeing how he'd spoken to me. My phone was silent until the kids asked about breakfast. I made pancakes, checking the group chat every few minutes, but it remained quiet. Mark's angry letters paled in comparison to this silence. While washing breakfast dishes, I got a private message from my cousin Emily. After years of waiting, she was glad I'd called out Mark's manipulation. She shared a story I'd never heard. For years ago, Mark asked her to watch his kids 3 days before her engagement party because his regular sitter was sick. Even though Emily couldn't miss her party, Mark insisted that family helps. She left her party early to pick up his kids, missing speeches and cake cutting, only to later learn his sitter hadn't been sick. He just didn't want to pay for weekend childcare. Emily wrote that 6 other family members had similar stories but never confronted him. Mark would request urgent support, and they'd change their lives. An uncle missed his daughter's school play. Another relative skipped a job interview. My aunt even cut a vacation short. Everyone, Emily said, had accepted Mark is Mark for years. She was proud of my opposition and hoped it would inspire others to set limits. My screenshots, she said, showed many people how Mark truly handled family. At 1 p.m., I answered a stranger's call, thinking it might be the restaurant about my celebration. Instead, a man yelled that I'd ruined his best friend's marriage. It took me a second to recognize Mark's college friend, whom I'd met twice at family events. He claimed Allison was threatening divorce over the Hawaii fiasco, and it was all my fault. Mark, he insisted, was a good man who had asked his sister for a favor. I quietly asked if he'd seen Mark's texts. He dismissed it, saying it didn't matter because family helps. I asked if he would skip his own graduation for someone else's vacation. He paused, then mumbled, "That's different." When I pressed how it was different, he grumbled about Mark paying for the vacation. After 7 years of night school, while working full-time, I repeated and I'd invited 62 people to my graduation. Would he skip his master's to babysit someone else's kids? Silence. He complained I was twisting things and hung up. I held the phone, oddly pleased that Mark's best friend couldn't justify his actions. My phone rang again. Allison, Mark's wife. Her name made me queasy. I answered from the balcony, expecting her to scream like Mark. Her voice was quiet, cautious. She asked if Mark had told me to skip my master's to babysit. I confirmed and offered to email her the texts. "Yes, please," she said. I sent them. 45 seconds of silence passed on the phone. Then, very quietly, she asked if the kids enjoyed it. The question shocked me. I told her they had fun and cheered the loudest. When she asked what else the party did, I described the kids' table with coloring pages and mocktails. Another long wait. "Did you make those signs to hold?" she asked. I said I did, and how everyone at the ceremony loved seeing 3 tiny kids, so excited about their aunt graduating. Her voice dropped further as she asked for the images. I sent photos of the kids throwing petals and holding their placards. Allison began, sobbing silently on the phone. She said Mark had promised he'd watch the kids in my apartment and never mention my graduation. She apologized, said she had no idea, and wouldn't have gone on the trip. I told her the kids had fun. It was wrong, she choked out. I made you choose between school and family. Her voice grew, tears stopping as wrath replaced remorse. Mark had told her I'd volunteered to take the kids to help with their anniversary vacation. He'd made it sound like I was helping them, not sacrificing my milestone. I told Allison about the hotel cancellation and that Mark gave me his kid emergency credit card. I considered his children's aunt's graduation an emergency worth the cost. She laughed bitterly. Can't argue with that logic, she said. She hung up, saying she needed to talk to Mark. I waited on my balcony, wondering how that talk went. Allison called back 75 minutes later, shaking with anger, not tears. She said Mark had been complaining for months about how I never helped with the kids and prioritized school. He'd convinced her I was selfish and uncaring about family. Why would your husband lie about his sister? She asked. As she listened to their conversations, she realized how often Mark had manipulated situations to make me look bad. He'd told her I'd canceled babysitting at the last minute when he'd asked during finals week or when I was working. He'd even booked kids' birthday parties during my class periods, refusing to postpone them despite my refusal. Allison trembled as she recounted Mark's lies to make me sound like a mean aunt who didn't care about family. She admitted she judged me solely on his account and never considered my selfishness. She realized Mark was lying to avoid asking why I couldn't provide last-minute childcare. She apologized again, saying she needed time to consider her marriage. I apologized for her situation, not knowing what else to say. She denied it had apologetic merit. Hanging up with Allison felt like the ground had moved. Then, Mark's parents' number flashed on my phone. I let it ring 3 times before answering, knowing what was coming. Before I could greet her, Mark's mom demanded I apologize and pay for his hotel stay. She called my unauthorized credit card use theft. After her rant, I gently told her Mark gave me the kid emergency card. And after he tried to make me miss his aunt's graduation, his kids went an emergency in my book. As she started arguing, I told her I had to check on the kids and hung up. I placed the phone on the kitchen counter, my hand shaky, realizing I'd been holding my breath. 18 minutes later, Brooke arrived with 2 bottles of wine and a bag of takeout. Seeing my expression, she pushed past me, went to the kitchen for glasses, poured us generous amounts, and made me sit at the table. Start from the beginning, she said. My story included Mark's demand to skip graduation, the hotel cancellation, and Allison's calls. Brooke gaped. She dropped her wine glass and called me her hero for finally resisting Mark's manipulation after all these years. She recounted all the times I'd bent to his needs, canceling my birthday dinner because he needed a sitter, working from home for a week when his kids had chickenpox. Brooke raised her glass, declaring that seeing those 3 kids celebrate my graduation was the right response to Mark's years of disregarding my achievements. My shoulders relaxed as we clinked glasses. 3 days later, my phone rang again while the kids built a blanket fort. Mark had reached my mom. Her number made me sick. She immediately launched into it. I should have been bigger and delayed my graduation for November, as Mark advised. Her dissatisfied voice always made me feel 9 again, like I'd done something wrong. I reminded her I got my master's after 7 years of night school while working full-time, and 62 people, including her mother from Florida, had watched me walk. My mom interrupted. Family always comes first. Now your selfishness is ruining Mark's marriage. She claimed Allison threatened to leave him and take the kids over my petty ceremonial concerns. My blood pressure surged. I had to grip the phone to avoid throwing it. For deep breaths, I asked as calmly as possible, "How many life events do you want me to sacrifice before I prioritize myself?" I reminded her Mark had ruined my bachelor's graduation and my LSAT, and this was my time after years of hard work. My mother fell silent. Her breathing changed. In a low voice, she said she'd call me later, that she needed to consider what I said. I knew she'd be discussing sides with my dad. After we hung up, I sat on my sofa, staring at the wall while the kids played happily in their fort, unaware that their parents' marriage was crumbling in Hawaii. That night, Grandma Ella Laner called from her hotel again. She advised me not to let my mother shame me for graduating. Then she revealed something new. My parents always excused Mark because he was the oldest, and there were different expectations, she said. Mark would throw huge tantrums as a child to get his way, and Mama always gave in rather than endure the yelling. Grandma said she knew it from her own parenting mistakes with my mom, and she was sorry I'd suffered so long. My grandfather, she added, would have been proud of my self-defense. She cried, wishing she had stopped this when Mark was young, instead of seeing him manipulate everyone. Her words meant everything. I thanked her. After hanging up, I felt understood by at least one family member. For 3 more days with me, the kids still talked about graduation like it was the best day of their lives. They cut graduation hats from construction paper, decorated diplomas with glitter and my name on stickers. Lucas and Ava practiced graduation with their toy animals, walking across the coffee table while cheering and throwing petals. Lily, my 9-year-old niece, declared she really wanted to attend my doctoral graduation to throw more petals. I told them I was done with school and wouldn't be graduating again. I was thrilled she thought I was smart enough to be a doctor, but she looked upset. Then she smiled and suggested I throw flower petals for her graduation. I promised to attend. Her grip on me was too tight to breathe. That day, I got a text from Daniel, my restaurant graduation coordinator. He said the party was great and asked if I was okay after hearing me on the phone with an upset person yesterday. I replied with the basics. My brother tried to make me miss my graduation to babysit, but I took his kids instead. Daniel was shocked that my brother would try to make me miss my master's graduation after 7 years of night school. My coworkers, he said, understood how hard I worked and how much that degree meant to me. When he offered to be a character witness to prove I wasn't a selfish monster, I laughed for the first time in hours. I thanked him, saying I might accept if my family kept acting like I'd done something wrong. Allison called again on the 3rd day of Mark and Allison's Hawaii vacation. Her voice was new. She accused Mark of lying about my availability and requesting I skip graduation. He initially disputed everything, suggesting I was exaggerating, but then she showed him my text conversations and screenshots. Mark eventually confessed, but he fought, saying my graduation wasn't as important as their marriage, and I should have understood. Allison sounded exhausted and heartbroken, describing how their tension had ruined their vacation. They hardly spoke. Mark kept trying to persuade her without apologizing for what he'd done to me. Even though it wasn't my fault, I felt terrible their marriage was suffering. Allison started asking about other times Mark had ruined my big life events. I recounted the LSAT incident, how his emergency made me miss my test and wait months to reschedule. I told her about spending my bachelor's graduation in the bathroom with a sick toddler instead of walking across the stage. As I gave example after example, Allison was surprised. She said she didn't know the pattern was so widespread and long-standing. She realized her spouse had a serious problem with respecting others' limits and putting himself first. She didn't know what this meant for their marriage, but now she knew. I felt terrible for her, learning these hard truths about her husband. Later that night, my dad called. I braced myself for another family unity talk. He said Mark and I had made decisions that worsened the issue, trying to be neutral. He suggested we sit down and talk like adults after Mark returned from Hawaii to resolve this as a family. I appreciated that he wasn't automatically supporting Mark, unlike my mom, but I was upset that he was treating this like a two-sided issue when the facts were clear. Mark had forced me to sacrifice important moments for his convenience for a decade, and I'd finally declined. I told my dad I'd talk, but I wouldn't apologize for graduating. Fair enough, he said. After we hung up, I realized he was trying to be diplomatic, but he wasn't demanding I make amends. The next day, the family group chat heated up again. My aunt wrote a lengthy letter about family being eternal, forgiving, and uniting in times of trouble. She suggested we all sit down to resolve family issues after Mark returned. My phone held the message for almost 3 minutes before my cousin Emily replied. She suggested Mark apologize before anyone sat down. Her message got 4 thumbs up instantly. Up to 8 relatives gave thumbs up. No one responded to my aunt's unity message. I put my phone away and focused on the kids. That night, I ordered pizza from the kids' favorite place. At my paper plate kitchen table, the twins squabbled over the last breadstick. Lucas, my nephew, stopped and looked at me intently. Why was Dad so angry on the phone yesterday, he asked. He'd heard his mom crying in the bathroom after talking to him. My stomach dropped, but I spoke normally. Adults argue sometimes, but everything is fine, I told him. He nodded and went back to his pizza, but I could tell he was still thinking. I tried to ignore what these kids were learning for the rest of supper. They should have been having fun at their aunt's, not worrying about their parents fighting in Hawaii. Lily joined me in cleaning up after dinner, her expression suggesting something important was coming. She wanted to go to college like me. Do you think Dad will try to stop me from graduating? She asked. The question made me grab the counter. This 9-year-old already knew her father's routine. She linked his attempt to disrupt my graduation to her future. I knelt at her level and promised her I would attend her graduation no matter what. She could be anything, and she would celebrate her successes without interference, I told her. She hugged me tightly. This tiny kid shouldn't have to worry about this. I held her, trying not to cry. The next morning, Mark texted me from Hawaii. He and Allison were returning early. They'd cut their vacation a day short because the tension made it unbearable. Mark wanted to talk before picking up his kids. My stomach dropped reading that. This conflict had escalated since his airport call 4 days ago. I anticipated trouble. I told him he could pick up the kids, but we wouldn't talk until he calmed down. I reminded him of his last voicemail threat to beat me. He replied a few minutes later, angry, calling me dramatic. He promised to treat the kids civilly. I didn't believe him, but at least I had written proof of his promise to be calm. At 2:40 p.m., a neighbor knocked, looking worried. She said a man had been driving slowly outside my building, viewing the windows for 18 minutes. I thanked her and looked out. Mark's car. He was across the street, planning what to say. My hands trembled as I called Brooke. I asked her to come over and to bring her boyfriend. He'll be here in 11 minutes, I said. Please hurry. Without thinking, I agreed. I knew Mark wouldn't act out with her big, rugby-playing boyfriend there. I didn't fear Mark would hurt me, not with witnesses, but I wanted him to know I was supported. Brooke and her boyfriend arrived 11 minutes later. A knock at my door followed their brief sit-down. I peeked through the peephole. Mark's face was red, exhausted and sunburned. When I opened the door, he barely looked at me before asking, "Where are my kids?" The kids, hearing him, burst out of their bedroom, excited, talking over each other about graduation. Lily showed him her photos on my phone. Mark's jaw tightened as he scrolled through pictures of his kids, holding signs about their amazing aunt. His face grew redder with each photo. The children ran to get their belongings. Mark turned to me. "We need to talk," he said, expecting me to reconcile with his wife. "I have nothing to fix," I told him, my heart racing but my voice steady. "I guarded and entertained your kids. Your lies ruined your marriage." Mark flushed and started to speak harshly. Brooke's boyfriend rose from the couch. He didn't speak or threaten, just stood there. Mark reconsidered his words. "Get in the car," he snapped at his kids. Little Lily carried the stuffed animal I'd bought her while the twins ran with their backpacks. At the door, Mark paused. "The family will learn about you," he said over his shoulder. "You'll regret choosing paper over family." Then he left. I closed the door, my legs weak. Though it had been less than 4 minutes, it felt like hours. I slid to the floor, knees to chest, and cried. Not the shocking breakdown I expected, but quiet, exhausted, gasping for breath. Brooke remained silent at first, letting me cry in her arms. Her boyfriend, near the door, whispered that he'd wait in the car for privacy. After he left, Brooke pulled me close. "You did nothing wrong," she said. Mark's anger was about realizing he couldn't control me. After years of making me feel guilty for living my life, she said he was losing his power. I sniffled, wiping my face on my sleeve. "I'm stupid for crying." "You're not dumb," she countered. "Family is harder to fight than strangers because they know what to push." We sat on the floor for 18 more minutes until I calmed down. Brooke made me drink water and reminded me that Mark paid double for a motel while I walked to graduation with 3 cheering kids. "You won," she said, despite his yelling. The next day, my phone was quiet. No angry Mark texts, no wife voicemails, no family group chats. It felt odd after 4 days of constant notifications. Allison texted me at 1 p.m. She wanted to meet for coffee without telling Mark. I stared at the message. I didn't expect her to reply without Mark. I said I could meet her. We chose a cafe halfway between us for the next afternoon. I wondered all day what she would say. Part of me feared a trap. Maybe Mark sent her to yell at me in person. I hoped she wanted to hear my side, not guilt me about their marriage issues. I arrived 12 minutes early at the cafe, ordering coffee, and settling into a door-facing corner table. Allison arrived on time, looking exhausted, her ponytail messy, eyes bagged. She ordered tea and sat across from me without looking up, her hands clasped around her cup. She finally looked at me. "I haven't slept," she said. She remembered Mark exploiting situations. "Just shut up and let her speak," I told myself. I didn't recognize her examples. Mark, she explained, told her parents she was too busy for visits because he didn't want to drive. He told her friends that she canceled plans after failing to find a babysitter when he never called one. He told her sister the kids were sick and couldn't attend her birthday, but he just wanted to watch football. The pattern was everywhere she looked. Allison put her cup down and faced me. She said Mark had portrayed me as the selfish sister who rejected family help for years. She'd trusted him because she had no reason to doubt. She apologized for judging me without facts. Her apology was raw. She'd given Mark an ultimatum. Either she took the kids to her parents, or he started marriage counseling. She claimed she will. Her kids wouldn't learn to lie and manipulate for what they want. I appreciated her apology, but I told her she didn't need to apologize for believing her husband. Shaking her head, she said she should have asked more questions. Her reason for ignoring the signs? Convenience. But this was her husband and her children's father, so I spoke carefully. I detailed Mark's disruption of my milestones. His fake emergency caused me to miss my LSAT. Spending my bachelor's graduation in the bathroom with his sick kid instead of walking across the stage. All the times he expected me to drop everything and made me feel guilty for declining. Each story upset Allison more. She realized his behavior wasn't just about me. Putting himself first was his habit. She'd excused him, thinking he was stressed or overwhelmed because she loved him. But now she knew it was deeper. We talked for 3 hours. More tea for Allison, more coffee for me. She claimed Mark's parents always pardoned him and demanded compliance. She said his mother called her yesterday, telling her to forgive him and stop worrying about one vacation. This phone call made her realize the problem went beyond Mark. The whole family taught him to expect favors. His mother told her Mark was sensitive and needed support, like a child, not a grown man with 3 kids. That conversation, Allison said, opened her eyes most. She saw how Mark learned and accepted this behavior. Before we left, Allison invited me to family therapy with Mark. Professionals should hear both sides, she said. I didn't want to get involved in their marriage stuff. Her hand touched mine across the table. She suggested someone else evaluate Mark's behavior besides her. He needed to hear it from a manipulated person outside their marriage. Time to think, she said. Part of me wanted to reject them and avoid their mess, but part of me knew Allison needed help fixing things. I agreed to one session, but stressed that I was supporting her, not reconciling with Mark. I declined family mediation, where both sides take equal blame. She nodded, understanding. The therapist, she said, would focus on Mark's behavior, not my excuses. Allison hugged me before leaving the cafe. She was glad I stood up for myself because it revealed things she ignored. She thought Mark's reaction to being rejected showed he expected everyone to comply. Despite the discomfort, she appreciated my honesty. That night, my mom called. Her voice had changed since we last spoke. She sounded worried, not mad. She told my dad and grandmother everything. She realized she'd been defending Mark too long. She regretted not supporting me sooner, saying she should have seen the pattern years ago instead of telling me to be flexible. I wasn't sure if this was real, if she'd change her mind tomorrow, so I didn't say anything. She kept talking about how she'd put Mark's comfort before mine. Her mother, she said, showed her the damage. My mom lowered her voice. She always caved to Mark's tantrums when he was younger. She said she avoided his meltdowns by taking the easiest route, and now she realized she had taught him to expect everyone to accommodate him. She apologized for her parenting mistakes, and that he turned out this way. She praised me for setting boundaries despite family strife. She promised to support my relationship with Mark, stopping her pressure to reconcile or accommodate him. I thanked her for her apology. We discussed changes for 35 more minutes. She'd treat us equally, not just compromise. After hanging up, I felt lighter than I had in days. 9 days later, therapy. I'd worked most of that time trying not to think about sitting with Mark while a stranger analyzed our family issues. I changed my outfit 3 times that morning. Nothing felt right for confronting your brother's manipulation with professional help. My stomach was flipping, but I settled on jeans and a sweater to look calm. In the therapist's downtown waiting room, the chairs were uncomfortable, forcing you to sit straight. Mark and Allison were already there. Mark crossed his arms, ignoring me, his jaw set, ready for a fight. Allison looked exhausted but focused, like she'd prepared all week. Her smile and thanks were small. I sat across from them, grabbed an unread magazine. The therapist called us in after 12 minutes. Her office had soft lighting and plants, meant to relax, but the tension was thick. A 60-year-old woman with kind eyes. She introduced herself, explained the session strategy. Everyone could speak freely, but she'd noticed a pattern. Mark shifted, wanting to leave. "Why are we here?" he demanded. He jumped in first. He said I had betrayed him by canceling his hotel and ruining his anniversary. I'd turned his request for family help into a revenge plot. He shouted about the last-minute hotel price and how Allison barely spoke to him the whole trip. I had caused his marriage problems by holding grudges over nothing. The therapist took notes, silent. After Mark finished, she asked why he expected me to miss graduation. Mark struggled to speak. He said he delayed it until November. The therapist asked if he understood scheduled ceremonies. "Yeah, but family emergencies come first," he exclaimed. She inquired if he had told Allison he booked the trip. He said yes. The therapist looked at me, still writing. "Take a breath and restart," she said. I recounted Mark showing up with his kids, claiming an emergency when he wanted to go to a concert, causing me to miss the LSAT, bringing his sick kids to my bachelor's graduation, forcing me to spend the ceremony in the bathroom instead of walking across the stage. I emphasized that this master's degree required 7 years of night school while working. Mark called 13 days before graduation, asking me to skip it for Hawaii. My hands shook, but my voice was calm as I listed each example. Mark turned beet red. The therapist asked Mark about these events. Yeah, but those were different situations, he replied, his response unclear. He said he only requested assistance when needed. The therapist asked if seeking help meant others had to miss important events. She asked Mark, "Family helps each other, right?" Mark fell silent. Then Allison spoke. Her anger was audible in her steady voice. Mark had manipulated their marriage. She told the therapist how he told her parents she was too busy to visit when he didn't want to drive. He canceled her friends' plans after never calling a babysitter. He lied about our conversations to convince her I was selfish and never helped with the kids. Allison said she discovered he'd labeled me the problem sister for years. Mark interrupted, but the therapist raised her hand. "Listen to the effects of his actions," she advised. Mark closed his mouth, his leg jumping in frustration. Allison persisted. She said Mark's mom told her he was sensitive and needed extra support after Hawaii. That conversation revealed Mark always expected special treatment. Seeing his reaction to my refusal revealed a marriage pattern she'd ignored. The therapist asked Mark what he heard. Mark said, "Everyone thinks I'm..." The therapist cut him off. "Their thoughts aren't important." She asked again what his wife and sister said about his behavior. A long silence for Mark. He finally concluded, "They think I'm selfish." The therapist said their thoughts weren't important. It was about recognizing his habits. In every example we shared, Mark put his needs and schedule before others' time and accomplishments. She said this violated autonomy. She acknowledged Mark believed families should help, but advised respecting others' refusal. This wasn't a help request, she said, but a demand for compliance and guilt when he didn't win. Mark's face showed several expressions: anger, denial, confusion. The therapist asked if his pattern hurt relationships. Mark guessed defensively. The session lasted 35 more minutes. The therapist asked Mark why he demanded others' time, why his family obligations were unclear. Always resisting, she made him consider the consequences of his demands. By the end, Mark looked exhausted. Without confessing or apologizing, he agreed to individual therapy. He must change this pattern or risk his marriage and family, the therapist warned, stating it clearly. I noticed Mark's expression change. Perhaps not acceptance, but the first sign that this was real and had consequences. We left the office quietly. Allison tapped my arm and thanked me for coming. Having concrete examples from outside their marriage helped the therapist see the full picture, she said. I watched Mark walk silently to his car, like someone had popped his confidence balloon. He looked less angry and more deflated. I went home, exhausted but relieved. Despite not fixing anything, the session began. 3 weeks later, Dad called to suggest a family dinner. Just him, Mom, Mark, and me. We must clear the air and move forward, he said. My stomach churned at the thought of sitting across from Mark and pretending everything was fine, but avoiding him forever was impossible. We were family whether I liked it or not. I agreed, but made my dad promise a public meeting. No house where emotions could explode without witnesses. We chose a chain restaurant halfway between my apartment and my parents' house, with laminated menus and bright fluorescent lights. Arriving first, I got a back corner table. My parents arrived 6 minutes later. Mom hugged me, whispering, I'm proud. Dad squeezed my shoulder. Mark, in a stiff button-down shirt, arrived last, looking uncomfortable. He slid into the booth across from me, staring at the menu like it was the most interesting thing ever. We discussed work and weather while ordering drinks and appetizers. No one mentioned Hawaii, graduation, or therapy. Finally, my dad cleared his throat. It was time. Mark slowly lowered his menu. His first direct look since sitting was at me. I apologize for making you miss your graduation, he said, his voice stiff like reading a script, and for the threatening voicemails. He blamed work and trip planning stress. My jaw tensed. Excuses accompanied his apology. I accept your apology, I said, but I demand change. I am no longer your childcare backup. You must ask for my help politely, and you must accept rejection. Mark nodded but didn't speak. My dad spoke up. After considering our family patterns, he realized Mark had expected special treatment for years. It must end, he said. Mark's eyes widened. He expected our parents' support again. Dad persisted. Mark was an adult with a family and needed to respect others' schedules and boundaries. Mom apologized for allowing Mark's behavior, saying making excuses for him since childhood was unfair to me. She promised equality in the future. Mark looked shocked. Without speaking, he opened and closed his mouth, processing that our parents wouldn't defend him. The rest of dinner was awkward but productive. The rules were basic. Mark asked for help 14 weeks in advance, and I was free to refuse, without guilt or manipulation. Our parents would be impartial and not force me to accommodate him. Mark accepted everything, still looking surprised. Leaving the restaurant, I felt lighter. It wasn't a miracle dinner. Mark still rationalized and blamed others, but it was progress. I had parental support. It wasn't perfect, but Mark had apologized. And we had clear boundaries instead of my implicit promise to always comply. 2 weeks later, Mark texted me. I stared at my phone. He'd scheduled a date night with Allison in 14 weeks and asked me to watch the kids. No telling, no demanding, just a polite please. He told me to let him know if I was busy. My brother used complete sentences and acknowledged my schedule. I texted back I could and thanked him for asking early. A thumbs up. No debt, no guilt. Nobody preached family duties. Just a thanks and a date. This was typical sibling behavior. I felt weird about feeling weird. A few days later, Grandma called, proudly. You started something, she said. My cousin told Mark she'd stopped last-minute babysitting and now needed 9 days' notice. My aunt said she couldn't change her plans for him. Allison had announced my graduation to his father-in-law, who lectured Mark on respecting others' time. Grandma said Mark was learning the hard way, that he couldn't force everyone to support him. She seemed proud I'd started a minor uprising. I just wanted to walk at my own graduation without drama, I told her. Sometimes, she said, one person standing up makes others realize they can too. People were talking about Mark's family grapevine stunts, and they'd just gone along to keep the peace. Work took my mind off family. My boss called me into her office, congratulating me on my master's. She invited me to apply for a 4-month management position. I'd manage a small team and get a big raise. My commitment to finishing school while working full-time was valued, she said. Mark would never understand how validated I felt leaving her office. He made me feel selfish for years of schooling. But education opened doors he'd never have. After work shifts, I studied all nights. I wrote papers on weekends instead of relaxing. Now, they saw tangible results, without ceremonies or paperwork. An envelope arrived at my apartment with Lily's return address. Inside was a drawing of her school graduation ceremony. Though only I wore a cap and gown, she drew us all. The stick figures smiled big, and she'd written, "My aunt is the smartest," in crayon at the top. This 9-year-old was focused. She cared because she saw my hard work and success. A simple black frame, now, sits next to my diploma on my desk. I remembered why standing up to Mark was right. Every time I saw it, it reminded me that I and his kids were learning to respect others' goals. 6 weeks after graduation, Allison texted me to invite me to the kids' play. Mark would be there, but they were doing family things, and the kids wanted me to see their performance. I agreed. I wouldn't punish the kids for their father's behavior. The elementary school auditorium was packed with parents holding recording phones. We sat next to Allison. On her other side, Mark looked awkward in a button-down. He nodded as I sat. I nodded back. We stayed silent. The lights dimmed, and kids in homemade costumes entered the stage. Lily took her forest scene, tree roll, seriously. The rabbit twins waved to us in the audience. After the show, kids ran around with juice boxes and cookies in the lobby. We felt stiff, trying too hard to be normal, but the kids loved seeing their aunt and parents. That mattered. As we left, Mark cleared his throat and approached me. "Thanks for coming," he said. His therapist was helping him understand why he always put himself first. "After doing it all your life," he said, "it's hard to spot the pattern." Though still struggling, he was becoming more aware. Change would be slow, but I appreciated the honesty. He seemed more self-aware than ever. I commended his effort. After another awkward moment, his kids ran up, demanding he race to the car. He waved and left. Allison said, "Thank you," squeezed my arm and followed her family. That night, I browsed vacation packages on my couch with my laptop. For years, I'd set aside money for Mark's emergencies, last-minute flights if he claimed urgency, unpaid leave if I needed to help him to cover my bills. That money sat waiting. I realized I didn't need it. I hadn't backed down. I switched accounts and checked beach resorts. Brooke squealed when I called her to announce our graduation trip. We were celebrating my master's degree, 7 years of night school, and learning to prioritize myself without family or guilt. After 9 days in Mexico, I felt lighter than I had in months. 9 weeks after graduation, routines were almost normal. Mark sometimes overreached. He'd ask for favors or guilt me about family obligations. But now, when I declined, he retreated instead of manipulating. Therapy helped, despite slow progress. Allison seemed happier when we spoke. Marriage counseling was improving communication, teaching Mark to consider her feelings before actions. Her expectations were reasonable. She knew his transformation would take time. Small wins were better than none. My boss called me into her office 5 weeks after our promotion discussion. Spreading paperwork on her desk, she smiled. "Management is yours," she said. "Pay raise, small team, more responsibility, flexible schedule." I signed the offer letter right there. That night, I told my parents and grandmother to clear their weekends for dinner. My reward. We met at a nice downtown restaurant. Mom hugged me, spoke highly of me, regretting not supporting me sooner instead of always accommodating Mark. Dad raised a glass to my success. Grandmother winked across the table, predicting my success. My promotion confirmed my late-night studying and sacrifices. I'd always valued education over Mark's ease. He'd long ignored my degree for his needs. Now, that degree boosted my career in ways he couldn't understand. 11 months after graduation, Mark's anniversary returned. My phone rang Tuesday afternoon as I organized files at my new desk. His name appeared, and I prepared myself. When I replied, he spoke more calmly, tentatively. He requested time to talk. I accepted, awaiting manipulation, but Allison was there too. He wanted to celebrate their anniversary at a bed and breakfast 90 minutes away over the weekend. He called 14 weeks in advance to ask me to watch the kids that weekend. No coercion, no assumption. Even though I was free, I checked my calendar when asked. The weekend worked. When I agreed, he seemed relieved. He appreciated it, knowing I was busy with my new job. After we hung up, I stared at my phone. Mark had respectfully asked for my first adult help. Therapy worked. Maybe not completely, but enough to make him realize when to switch tactics. Mark dropped off the kids Friday night with their bags and a weekend meal and activity plan. He listed their pediatrician and emergency contacts. Allison hugged and thanked me before leaving. The kids rushed into my apartment to see their aunt. Over homemade pizza, Lily told me about her school project on famous scientists. Since the twins disagreed on a movie, I let them vote democratically. No one mentioned parental conflict. Nobody seemed anxious or worried. Like other kids, They were just having a sleepover at their aunt's. Saturday, we went to the Park Science Museum. Lucas gathered rocks, and Ava befriended every dog. Lily asked about my office job, wanting one too. We played board games, ate ice cream, and watched cartoons late. Sunday morning, the kids helped me flip pancakes. After crafts and reading, we were exhausted but happy when Mark and Allison picked them up. Allison took me aside while Mark loaded the kids into the car. Not in years had she looked so calm. Their weekend away was perfect, she said. They reunited without kids or stress. Her next statement shocked me. Mark, she said, was trying hard. Counseling taught him that others' schedules and feelings mattered. He sometimes performed old habits. He sometimes put himself first. But when she called him out, he stopped and thought instead of defending himself. Progress was slow but real. He learned to consider others' feelings before making decisions. She squeezed my hand and thanked me for opposing him at graduation. Their family's wake-up call, she said. 8 months after graduating, I was leaving the grocery store with 2 bags when someone called my name. I turned and saw a man approaching. It took me a second to recognize him. Mark's college friend, the one who called to yell at me about ruining Mark's marriage. My stomach sank. His discomfort was evident from a few feet away. He wanted to apologize. He'd only heard Mark's side and called me without details. Mark, he explained, had discussed therapy and manipulation. He realized he'd seen Mark do similar things with other friends over the years, making plans, then changing them last minute, expecting people to drop everything and getting angry when they declined. He dismissed it as Mark being Mark, but now he saw it as a problem. He apologized again and asked for forgiveness for jumping to conclusions. I appreciated the apology and was glad Mark was improving. I walked to my car, feeling lighter than I had in months. My new job constantly engaged me. My promotion gave me interesting projects and a team that valued my input. I owned my windowed office. I could schedule well. Studying until midnight stopped. I had time for friends, hobbies, and myself. One afternoon, while reviewing a report, I noticed something. Defying Mark and keeping my graduation had caused a chain reaction that resolved family issues. The kids saw adults respecting and setting boundaries. They learned to say no and to value their achievements without demanding sacrifice. Family support meant supporting each other's milestones. After Mark was honest, Allison felt more confident in her marriage. My parents treated Mark and me equally, not expecting me to accommodate him. Even extended family limited Mark. Sometimes family gatherings were still tense. Mark occasionally acted entitled, but now there were consequences. People confronted him. I confronted him guilt-free. Sometimes I relived graduation. 3 children shouted, "That's our aunt!" as I crossed the stage, the whole auditorium clapping and laughing. Grandmother gave honorary degrees. I finished something I worked 7 years for, and my kids were proud. That memory reminded me every day that I'd made the right choice, that I deserved to celebrate my successes without guilt, and that real family support means respecting each other's big moments instead of treating them like inconveniences.